I would introduce myself a little bit and then talk a little bit about my book. This is a book that I've written. It's called The Philanthropist, Our World in 2050. But just so you know who I am, a little bit more about me, I got a master's degree from the University of Denver a long time ago. And my degree is a Master's of International Business with an emphasis in finance, international trade, and economics. So I have been basically for 30 years of my life in this field working in economics as an economist. And I did a lot of forecasting in my career. One of the jobs that I held was the chief economist for the governor of Colorado. I worked there for 5 years. And currently, I am working for the state of California. I've been here since 2005, and I'm still working as an economist, and I'm moonlighting as an author. So this is kind of my passion and my interest. I'm very much interested in forecasting and looking into the future to see how an economist can help guide policy and to make intelligent decisions about our future. So that's a little bit about me, and then now about the book, and my subject. One of the things that economists do is make projections with looking at the past. So that's what goes into our models. Then we often pick something that we think is going to be kind of a following of the trend. We try to discern the underlying trends, and we try to follow that trend line. And usually it's it's kind of a growth model. It's upward in trajectory. So kind of you take a ruler and go through all the little ups and downs in the trend, and then you just project it forward. So that's usually the baseline forecast. And then we have an optimistic and a pessimistic scenario. So you have bands around that main. Since this has such a nice blackboard here, you have the baseline forecast, and then an optimistic, which goes a little bit above it, and then a pessimistic. So that's pretty much the basics of economics, is forecasting, is that you have these confidence levels in which you think your main assumptions and your analysis will be used. So there's a lot that goes into trying to figure out what's the optimistic scenario, what's the pessimistic scenario, and what's business as usual. So what really interests me is more longer term thinking and forecasting, almost like looking at science fiction and some of the things that where we're headed. And there are some ways to think about how to be optimistic and pessimistic with this kind of thinking. The trend, which is kind of scenario one, and then maybe something that has a growth model where you're going up very fast and you're coming back down quickly, which is a collapse scenario, and can be kind of viewed as your pessimistic scenario. That would be extremely pessimistic. So that collapse model is not something that usually mainstream economists will put into their models. And then there's something that is more like a taking off from wherever point, just more of a flat line, or kind of I think economists call this stagnation. So where things are kind of stuck and the growth isn't very good, it's just pretty flat. And then one of the things that is harder to think about is a transformational or paradigm shift model, which looks more like you have little loops and things to go through. So you have maybe something that looks like this. So you're going to go through a little bit of roundabout, going around in circles for a while before a new paradigm appears and you're moving forward in that new paradigm, the transformational forecast. So that's what this is an attempt to do.
Just so we have some idea of where we are with this, what does our current economy seem to be in any of these categories?
Probably pretty much on the trend. This one, the first one, just kind of a growth model. It's slow growth, but it's growing. I think that one of the sections that I read here about inequality is something that might be something that you would be interested in knowing more about or discussing perhaps. I don't know if you have any familiarity with this subject or any interest in it. But in 2010, the top 0.01%, about 16,000 families, had 5% of the national income. Well, that's historically documented. That's not fiction. Now, this is a projection. By 2030, the wealth had become more concentrated with only 5,000. And that's just following the trend line. I mean, you look at the way things are going with the Googles and the Apples, Facebook, all the wealth that's being concentrated in Silicon Valley, and plus the old money, the kind of like the dynastic families. I don't have too much trouble seeing that that's just going to continue on unless something comes in the way of that, unless there's something that's done to kind of give the power back to the people. So maybe we could have a conversation about that, or you have questions?
Do you have a suggestion for what could happen that could break this trend?
So I think that there are some real possibilities. It's very hard to say exactly, but this is there are 7 dilemmas. This organization is doing long-term forecasts for California. They're focused on California, not just international. But they look at these different areas: health, education, food, work, which also includes population and migration issues, water and government and equity. All of these kinds of variables can get mixed in many different ways depending on what model you're looking at. So in their transformational kind of model, you have technology, philanthropy, more diffused voting and power structures, so they're not concentrated. So finding a way to get that, to use maybe gaming platforms and technology to enhance our ability to have participatory government and less of this moneyed interest, high-powered lobbyists, bankers, oil companies, whatever, running our government, putting the foxes in charge of the hen house, which is what seems to be happening with government a lot of the time. So this organization is based in Palo Alto. The website for this is www.iftf.org. And it's the Institute for the Future. So I've been pretty impressed with them. They're one of the few places that will give you a transformational forecast. They don't go out as far as this did. This is kind of bordering on science fiction. And my husband, who helped me with editing this, said that he thinks that the scenarios that I have in this book are more like 2100, not 2050. He doesn't think that things are going to happen as fast as I have them projected here. But